I am 99 years old. There is a brass rivet on my mantelpiece. It's been sitting there for about 70 years, set into a little block of wood. My grandchildren used to pick it up when they were small. They'd ask me what it was, and I'd say it was a souvenir from the airplane factory where my sister worked during the war. That's what I believed. For 50 years, that's what I believed. I was wrong. That rivet is the reason I'm sitting here talking to you. It's the reason I came home from 31 combat missions over Germany. It's the reason a lot of men came home. And I didn't know any of that until 1994, when a researcher called me on the telephone and told me what my sister had done. Let me tell you exactly what happened. In the summer of 1943, B-17 flying fortresses were falling out of the sky over Europe, not from enemy fire, not from pilot error. They were coming apart in midair, wings folding like paper, fuselages splitting open, crews dying without ever seeing the enemy that killed them. The B-17 was supposed to be the toughest bomber in the sky, designed to take punishment that would destroy lesser aircraft. But something was causing catastrophic structural failures that nobody could explain. Not the MIT-educated engineers, not the experienced test pilots, not the designers who had built their reputations on the airplane. The answer came from a 19-year-old girl who had never finished high school. My sister, Margaret Sullivan, from a small town in Kansas. She was 18 when Pearl Harbor was bombed, working as a waitress at a diner near the highway. Like millions of young women across America, she answered the call when the war plants started hiring. Margaret had never seen the inside of a factory, never touched a power tool, never read a blueprint. But she had something the engineers didn't have. She had fresh eyes. She saw things that people who had been doing the same job for years had learned to ignore. The Boeing plant in Wichita hired her in February of 1943, Wing Assembly Section. Her job was riveting, driving metal fasteners through aluminum skin and structural members to create the wing's outer surface. The riveting gun weighed 8 pounds and vibrated constantly. The noise was deafening. Aluminum shavings got everywhere. By the end of a shift, her arms ached and her ears rang, and her coveralls were streaked with grease and metal dust. But Margaret paid attention. That plant was a miracle of industrial organization. Over 30,000 workers at its peak. The assembly line never stopped. Day shift flowed into night shift, flowed into day shift. Workers came from everywhere. Farmers, housewives, young women from small towns across Kansas and Oklahoma and Missouri. Most had never worked in manufacturing. Training was rushed. They were taught to follow procedures, meet specifications, keep the line moving. Questions were discouraged. Production was everything. And I was over there, tail gunner on a B-17. I didn't know what Margaret was doing. She didn't know what I was doing. We just wrote each other letters. 3 months into her job, Margaret noticed something. The wing spar, that's the main structural beam that gives the wing its strength, had a row of rivets along one section where the spacing wasn't right. Some rivets were closer together than others. She mentioned it to her supervisor. He glanced at it and shrugged, said it was within tolerance. The inspectors had passed it. Keep moving. Margaret kept moving, but she kept watching. Week after week, she saw the same pattern on wing after wing. The rivet spacing in that one section was always inconsistent. She asked why. The answer was simple. That section required workers to rivet in an awkward position, reaching around a structural member that blocked direct access. You couldn't see what you were doing. Everyone knew it. Everyone accepted it. The tolerances were set to accommodate the variation. The inspectors checked it. It always passed. The procedure was working as designed. But Margaret couldn't stop thinking about it. Something felt wrong. Then the reports started coming in from Europe. B-17s experiencing structural failures at unusual rates, wings cracking, fuselages splitting. Aircraft that should have survived were falling apart, and not in combat, during routine maneuvers, takeoffs and landings, flights that should have been completely safe. Crews reported hearing creaking and popping sounds before the wings came apart. Boeing sent engineers to investigate. They examined wreckage. They reviewed maintenance records. They analyzed flight data. The aircraft were failing at stress levels far below their design limits. Nothing made sense. Back in Wichita, Margaret read about it in the company newsletters posted in the break room. The newsletters didn't give details, but they urged workers to be extra careful, to double-check their work, to report anything unusual. The tone was worried. Margaret thought about those rivets, the ones everyone said were fine. She started keeping a notebook. I don't think her supervisors would have approved. On her lunch breaks, she watched other workers handle that difficult section on the wing spar. She watched how the variations accumulated. And she noticed something that nobody else had thought to look for. When workers riveted that section, they compensated for the awkward position by applying extra force. They had to, just to get the riveting gun into the right angle. But that extra force pushed the aluminum skin slightly out of position before the rivet was set. The skin would then be locked under tension. You couldn't see it. The surface looked flat. The rivets were properly set. everything appeared normal. But the metal was stressed in a way the original design had never anticipated. She tried her supervisor again. He told her to focus on her job. She tried the line inspector. He said the rivets were within specification and there was nothing to discuss. She was a 19-year-old girl from a Kansas farm town. The engineers had degrees from MIT and Caltech. The inspectors had years of experience. Who was she to question them? But her brother was still flying missions over Germany. That was me. I was out there sitting in a B-17 and trusting it would bring me home. And my kid sister was the one making sure it would. In June of 1943, Margaret submitted a formal suggestion through the plant's suggestion system. She wrote out everything she'd observed, the spacing variations, the compensating force, her hypothesis that the aluminum skin was being pre-stressed in a way that could lead to fatigue cracks over time. The suggestion landed on the desk of a young engineer named Robert Chen. Unlike some of his colleagues, Chen actually read the suggestions from the factory floor. He found that workers sometimes noticed things engineers missed because they spent all day looking at the actual product instead of drawings and calculations. Margaret's observations were specific and detailed. Her hypothesis pointed to a failure mode the engineers hadn't considered. Chen went to the factory floor. He found Margaret and asked her to show him. She demonstrated exactly what happened when workers riveted that section. She showed him the subtle variations across dozens of rivets. Then Chen brought a strain gauge and measured the stress in the aluminum skin after a section had been riveted. The readings were higher than expected. The metal was under tension that was not supposed to be there. He ran the numbers. The pre-stress from assembly, combined with the stress from normal flight operations, pushed the metal past its fatigue threshold much faster than the design calculations predicted. Wings that should have lasted thousands of flight hours were failing after hundreds. Margaret was right. A 19-year-old girl with no engineering education had identified the cause of failures that killed dozens of airmen and baffled the best minds in American aviation. The fix was simple once they knew. Boeing redesigned the access to that section of the wing spar, added a small cutout so workers could see what they were doing and rivet without applying compensating force, added maybe 10 minutes to each wing assembly. They issued a technical bulletin to every unit operating B-17s. Aircraft already in service were inspected. Many showed early signs of the fatigue cracking Margaret had predicted. They were repaired before the cracks could spread. Margaret received $50, the standard reward for a suggestion that was implemented, and a certificate of appreciation signed by the plant manager. Her name was mentioned in the company newsletter. The details were kept vague for security reasons. $50 for saving God knows how many lives. I came home in 1944, 31 missions, Distinguished Flying Cross. I hugged my sister and thanked her for her letters. She said she was glad I was home. She never told me what she'd done. I found that brass rivet on my dresser one day. She left it there with a note that said, "I kept this for you." I figured it was a keepsake from the factory, something sentimental. I set it on the mantelpiece and forgot about it. 50 years I walked past that rivet and didn't know what it was. In 1994, a researcher found Margaret through Boeing's records. She was 70, a grandmother, living in the same town where she'd grown up. The researcher asked her what she remembered most about the factory. Margaret didn't talk about the discovery. She talked about the fear. She said every woman on that line knew those planes were going into combat. They knew men would die if they made mistakes. That's why they paid such close attention. That's why they caught things the engineers missed. They were terrified of letting them down. She didn't think of herself as a hero. She said anyone could have seen what she saw. She just happened to be the one who spoke up. Margaret died in 2001. She never received a medal. Her name isn't in any history books. But I want you to understand something. You, whoever's listening to this, the experts told Margaret she was wrong. Her supervisors told her to stop asking questions. She had every reason to believe she was just a factory girl who didn't know what she was talking about. But she looked at what was actually happening instead of what everyone said was happening. She trusted her own eyes over the credentials of the people who told her she was mistaken. Fresh eyes see what experience learns to ignore. Every woman in those factories had something the engineers didn't. Not training, not education. They had someone they loved sitting in those airplanes. That made them pay a kind of attention that no engineering degree can teach. I pick up this rivet every morning. I hold it and I think about my sister, a waitress from Kansas who couldn't pass algebra, who saved my life and never said a word about it, who got $50 and thought that was generous. This little piece of brass is all that's left of what she did. I am 99 years old, and I owe every single one of those years to a 19-year-old girl who refused to stop looking.